If you are feeling emotionally numb, this episode is for you. I want to share with you what may be going on and some simple steps to help you continue to move forward. So let's get started.
Welcome to the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, a place for the strong, sensitive spiritual seeker to recognize the perfection of your human journey as a pet spiritual worlds through proven and grounded frameworks that support you to live in the wholeness you already are. For over the past 2 decades, I have supported people from all around the world, as well as Fortune 500 companies, to dissolve the divisions within them and live with greater empowerment and love. This podcast is an exploration of the paradoxes that befuddle us as we live our lives being both human and divine. Together, you and I, along with other experts, will navigate integrating psychology and spirituality, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, the darkness and the light, to create greater sacred union from within. I believe through your remembering that you are innately divine, that you will allow yourself to more openly shine. So let's get to it, because your unique light is needed more than ever.
Hello, and welcome to I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, where we explore the messiness of our humanity and how it is preparation for us as we remember more and more of our divinity. And so it's such a perfect way to explore this if you are in a place where you are feeling numbed out and stuck, because this is natural. This is normal. And so this is where I want to begin, is because for some reason we do not talk about how being in this psychological state where we feel numb and stuck is actually a normal part of our journey. So when I would work with individuals, oftentimes people would get referred to me, especially if they were in this state. And sometimes for people who were actually suicidal. And I believe I got referred to so much because I could understand exactly why they were in that state and why it felt normal to me. And I know this is not our ideal state. And I think it's understanding that parts of the journey of life are that we go through difficult times internally as well as sometimes externally. And it's happening to reveal more of the truth of who we are. And so why this phase is so important is because some of you may have already gone on what you felt was a journey to know more of you. You've done the inner work, you've done shadow work, you've done inner child work. And so you're saying, how the heck can there be more work? Well, all of those processes are super important because they are about reclaiming aspects of yourself. And yet, oftentimes, we're doing it still with an attachment to the outer world. And so sometimes we're doing the inner child work so we can heal our inner child so that she knows that she or he is deserving of something in the external world, a relationship, a great career, whatever it is, right? And yet the focus is still on the external. You do the shadow work so that you become a better manifester, so that you recognize where you're still holding on to shame. This is all beautiful. But again, the tendency that we've been taught is to get some sort of external carrot out there in the outside, things that are outside of us. And when we do that, there's still this belief that we need something outside of us in order to feel lovable, in order to feel worthy. And when this happens, it's normal, but there comes a time, there comes a stage where the divine, however you have a relationship with your spiritual power, the goddess, God, the divine, however you want to see that, will guide you to say, all that's great, and yet you are here to remember the love that you are. Because when you remember the love that you are, nothing that's happening in the external world will take away from the love that you are. And with that, there is this sense of inner knowingness, strength, and peace that comes along with it, that I think more and more people are being initiated into at this time. And I use that word initiation because it really is a sacred gateway to you remembering the truth of who you are. And this is why it's so important for me to support you to remember that there's nothing wrong with you and that this is a normal part of our journey. Not everybody gets called into this journey. I think it speaks to you and your relationship to a higher power, that the higher power believes in your ability to make it through this stage that is filled with emptiness, nothingness, and numbness. And that is very scary. And I understand that. So, what is happening is there's a dismantling of who we once were in order to remember who we are. And so I share this all the time because I think it's that important. And it really is that journey from caterpillar to butterfly. But what we don't talk about, where you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. Isn't that great? Well, that in between stage is when the caterpillar literally turns to soup because there is just a dismantling of this being that used to walk the earth that is going to set out to fly. And I think this is very symbolic of what happens to our essence, to our being. You are being set out to fly in a way, not that and you're going to literally grow wings, but your internal sense of self will be able to fly in a way where you are not attached to the external. So you are free. What the wings symbolize is your internal sense of freedom because you're not attached to these external circumstances to define you. So we're still human. We still need external things to take care of ourselves and our well-being, but they're not attached to our identity. And so the soup that we become is more about letting go of the things that we cling to, that when we were a caterpillar and we are so convinced that we are a caterpillar, and in that identity, that all has to become muck in order for us to remember and have our imaginal selves who know who we came here to be form into the wings that allow us to have an internal sense of freedom. And so this is the divine's way of supporting us, is to become emotionally numb, because just like we have anesthesia to knock us out when we are going through some sort of surgery, when pieces are dismantled, we have an internal anesthesia, that numbness for when our ego is being dismantled. And our ego must be dismantled when our identity of self is being reformed. And that's what is happening for you. So again, I want to normalize this. I also want to normalize the fact that this may be happening to you because of a big upheaval in your life. You've lost someone that is meaning to you. You're going through a divorce. You lost a job that has brought you abundance or an identity, a spiritual crisis that you're going through. It can come forward in these crises, or like me, it was more of a slow unraveling where things just suddenly were not working out for me. And it was like one thing after another after another. And this can be shocking when you've gone through and done the internal work. You've done the inner child work, you've done the shadow work, you've gotten good at manifesting, and then all of a sudden things aren't working for you, and you're like, what the heck is going on? That's how it was for me. And it was this slow disembodiment where I felt like I was being picked apart, pulled apart. And so it was like that slow ripping off of the band-aid rather than the tearing off of the band-aid. In either case, it's not fun, it's not pretty, and it's difficult, right? And so for me, I had no idea what was going on. And that's why it is so important to me to share with you this, to normalize it, and to understand it as sacred. And I know that not everyone is going to see it that way. But that's why this is an invitation, and this podcast is I'm Perfectly Divine. To know that for the strong, spiritual, sensitive seeker, that there is a place for you to understand what is happening for you, because you were built with a sensitivity for a reason, and part of this will support you to really know the strength of your sensitivity in a way that you can truly honor yourself like you haven't before, because all of what is happening is getting us to this place of emptiness, to this nothingness, to where we feel like soup, um, in order to bit by bit rebuild and rebuild from the strength and the truth of who we are. And it will be so strong. This foundation inside of you that you are building is so strong that nothing in the external world will shift from you knowing the love and power of who you are. And this is when we gain our wings. This is when we are truly free. So, we have to go through this though, and I have our human journey where it feels like our life is falling apart. So what do we do? This is where I want to give you some just really basic, what seems like basic, but so important key aspects for you to think about, to support you during this time. And then I'll also have an invitation for you if you want to take this deeper. So it's just really understanding and honoring yourself, first of all, that you are going through an awakening. And the awakening is wanting you to come back to the internal. So if you feel less productive, if you feel like you can't make things happen on the external, please know this is exactly where you're supposed to be in this phase. It's an internal phase. Why this is so important is because we have been brainwashed to believe that everything is about achieving and being more productive in the external. And so this whole phase that you are being asked and invited to go through is to help you understand in the core of your being that what is most important is you, is the love that emanates from you. And we have to find it again and get rid of all the external things that are distracting us from knowing that. And so if we just think about social media and news and the ways that we are told that our identity is something outside of us, we have the internal work and resilience to be called inward, because you do have the strength and the resilience to remember who you are. And that's, again, I can't keep saying enough how you have been chosen for this state exactly because of your strength. And I will raise my hand to be the first to tell you, I did not feel like I was this strong. I did not feel like, I'm like, you made a mistake. You chose the wrong person. Remember, I'm sensitive. What are you doing here? All the inner dialogue that we have. And all of that is also going to be dismantled. to help you remember your truth. You have been chosen for this stage exactly because of the love and strength that you are. And I feel that in every part of my being. So we need support though with our human selves as we do this. And this is where we go back to the very, 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 very basics where you have to just take care of yourself um, in very simplistic ways, but ways that should not be dismissed because we need these simple, healthy habits to guide us. So this is all about like, how can I do simple habits without having to think about them? When I was called to go into this stage, again, none of this consciously, but I want to speak to this so that you can be more conscious of it because I think it helps our minds to understand what the heck is going on for us. There was this calling for me to completely give up alcohol. And it's not like I had an alcoholic problem. I definitely overdrank in college, and that was another thing. But as an adult, I didn't. But what I recognized was that weekend desire for the buzz. I loved having a buzz. And there was this inner calling to completely let that go. And I didn't know what that was. And for me, this was happening um, before COVID because I remember it was almost a year. It was about 9, 10 months when we went into lockdown. And I was like, oh, I could really go for a glass of wine. And at that point, it was 10 months. And, it's kind of like facing all this uncertainty. And I was like, if my husband would have said, yeah, let's have a glass of wine, I probably would have. But uh, through that time, I was really guided to understand how turning to alcohol, even in a little bit, was a form of escape. Recently, I was reading Megan Watterson's book, The Girl Who Baptized Herself. Highly recommend it. She also speaks of a time where she was called to stop drinking, not because she was having problems like what we consider to be alcoholism. But I am going to turn to a quote that she said in this book, which she framed her drinking as a way to quote unquote exist elsewhere. And she said that this idea, this notion of existing elsewhere, it is translated in Aramaic as the word death. So it's just enough of an escape to exist elsewhere where we are not being with ourselves. So I'm not saying you need to stop drinking during this. What I will tell you is that during this phase of numbness, we are being called to like go into the bullseye of who we are. And so the more we can do to not distract ourselves from the muck of who we are, the clearer we will get. That's what I'll say about it. So I have no attachment to whether you drink or not. I'm just sharing with you my experience and what I've heard from others as well as they've stopped drinking. It's just this understanding that on some level we're using it to escape. But we can use all sorts of things to escape. I've worked with others where they turn to gaming as an escape. They've turned to sex as an escape, shopping. You know the deal. We all have those escape things. And so it's not that you necessarily have a problem. It's being real with yourself that, oh yeah, this is where I try to escape the pain. And the more we can be in the pain, the more we can get clear about what we need to do next. And I'll have more about that on the end and towards the end of this episode. What I also want to share, this is a time of simplicity. How can I simplify my life? And this means truly honoring yourself for doing that literal one foot in front of another, like honoring, I got out of bed today, honoring, I went to work today. And I know the ego is going to say, well, look at all these other people who are able to go to work and not have a problem. First of all, we have no idea what's going on for other people. Second of all, they're not in this phase. And third of all, we're not supposed to be looking outside of ourselves anymore. And so this is part of the practice where we are not comparing ourselves to others. Now, I mean, our humanness, we still do that, but this is part of the practice that we come back to. What do I need for myself during this time in my life, and be okay with that? And so there is a way to nourish ourselves during this time in mind, body, spirit, and emotion. And this is where the simplicity of, can I take care of my body? Can I have a routine where I exercise each day? That's going for a walk, that's doing something that moves my body, that just helps move this energy. Super simple stuff. But we go back to the basics of like self-care when we are in this stage, because we are turning to mush. It is getting outside in nature. Nature helps us to remember the rhythms of life, that life isn't all about when the crops come to fruition, when we're supposed to collect the harvest. There are times of death. There are times where we are recycling what once was to be reborn again in the spring. And um, some of our cycles take longer than others. And to honor that and see that, witness that in nature. Um, and then to deepen our spiritual practice. This is a great time to explore your spiritual practice. This is for me when I was being called into going on the priestess path, which again is just a pathway to remembering the love that we are, and to exploring that from a divine feminine lens. And so this was something that was very supportive to me as I was going through this unraveling. And so, whatever it is for you, this is also a practice of deep inner listening. So, we are being called to go within and have less distractions so we can listen. So, any practice that guides you into meditation, silence, prayer that's contemplative so that you can just be with yourself is part of the experience. So, it's really understanding that we have this phase because when we are free from all that holds us back, we become sovereign. We become less controlled by the external. And if you're sensitive like me, you know that our tendency to people please. And again, I get it. Like, our minds can think, I've done all that. I went to therapy, I did the inner child work, I've worked through the shame. And the whole point of this unraveling is to say, oh, shoot, there's another layer of this. Oh my gosh, wow, that's still happening. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means that you are becoming clearer and clearer how this happens to all of us, so that you have compassion not just for yourself, but for others when you see them get tangled in it. Because what our ego wants to do is judge others and judge ourselves. And so the freeing aspect of this is that we become less judgmental towards ourselves, less harder on ourselves and others. And so this is part of the reason, at least for me, because my my ego can be so sticky, that it took so long. And so I understand this. I also understand that for me, things became really sticky for me because I was clinging on to aspects of myself that I thought were real but weren't. Even though I was doing things that were supportive of me, I was working out daily. I was I had that spiritual practice. I was really going deep spiritually, and felt that connection to nature, but emotionally I still felt lost. So while I was grateful for these daily steps of caring more for myself and that I knew how the self-care was so important, there was a deeper understanding that I was craving, that I needed to understand what was happening to me psychologically speaking from a holistic perspective that I wasn't getting from my spiritual practices, that I wasn't getting from taking care of my body. And so this is why I created a private podcast that I'm inviting you to step into if it's something that you're being called to, so that you can explore what may be happening for you on a psychological level that takes it even deeper. And this is a series for those of you who are willing to hold that you are in a process of giving up what, quote unquote, what I think is me, to reclaim and remember the real me. So if you are here where you're like, I am ready to let go of what I think is me in order to reclaim and remember the real me, then this series may be right for you, because this is who I made it for. And there is a small upgrade into this private series because I want you to opt in for yourself, exactly to say, yes, I am ready for this. Because I know in part of the process when you are stuck there, and in that numbness, there is a mourning. And so there can be a mourning where it's like, where you're grieving and you're like, don't touch me. I want to be left alone. And that is normal too. And there's this phase that you get to where you're like, I am ready to become unstuck and face what wants to be dislodged, psychologically speaking. And you're willing to say, what more is there for me to see? Despite all the stuff that inner work I've done, despite me going to therapy forever or doing the inner child work, going on these spiritual quests, what more is there for me to see, to understand, and know about myself as I navigate being depressed or anxious, angry, sensitive, as I navigate this space in between. So I don't want people to just stumble upon this information like they would a normal podcast, because again, you've got to be ready. And so the invitation is for you, if you are ready to face this aspect with love and honor and respect. And so you can learn more about this at michelleburcell.com/private podcast. Otherwise, the big takeaway is there is nothing at all wrong with you. Come back to the basics, come back to taking care of yourself, and always, always remember there is nothing wrong with you. And there is nothing to prove, just to remember. I'll see you next time.
I am so honored you have joined me today. If you enjoyed the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, subscribe so you don't miss any of our power-filled episodes. Also, if you know another who is strong, sensitive, and spiritual and wants to dive deeper into emotions and ancient wisdom so they too can create profound peace and fulfillment from within, please share this podcast. Thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to reconnecting with you soon.